On screen, Steven Seagal was the untouchable action hero, a stoic, ponytailed Aikido master who could snap a limb with a flick of his wrist and barely break a sweat. In movies like Under Siege and Above the Law, he was a one-man army who never, ever backed down from a fight. But what happens when the cameras are rolling, but there's no script? Well, it turns out that in real life, Seagal has mastered a very different art: the awkward escape. He built a career on being unflappable, yet his life off-screen has become a highlight reel of him running from reporters, rivals, and uncomfortable questions. How did the man who claimed to be a seventh Dan Aikido master, a rank even his ex-wife disputes, become the king of the cringy getaway? Today, we're peeling back the curtain on the Hollywood legend to reveal the very different man hiding underneath. Long before he was walking out of interviews, Seagal was pulling vanishing acts on set. These weren't just about dodging a question. They were about escaping reality, accountability, and sometimes a well-deserved dose of humility. It all starts with a story that's become a Hollywood legend, involving the godfather of grappling, Gene LeBell. The scene was the set of 1991's Out for Justice. Seagal had been boasting to anyone who would listen that his Aikido training made him immune to being choked out. LeBell, a legendary stuntman and judo master, decided to call his bluff. According to witnesses, LeBell locked Seagal in a chokehold, and Seagal went out like a light. But here's where the story gets infamous. The rumor that has swirled for decades is that the chokehold caused Seagal to have a biological accident, right then and there. While Seagal furiously denies it ever happened, and other witnesses downplay the graphic details, they still confirm a physical showdown took place and LeBell came out on top. But his on-set escapes weren't always so dramatic. Sometimes they were just weirdly aggressive. Just ask John Leguizamo. During rehearsals for the 1996 film Executive Decision, Leguizamo says Seagal walked on set and announced to the cast, "I'm in command. What I say is law." Leguizamo did what most of us would do. He laughed. Seagal, who is over half a foot taller, allegedly didn't find it funny and slammed Leguizamo against a brick wall, knocking the wind out of him. When faced with a co-star who wasn't buying his alpha dog act, Seagal's response was a burst of physical intimidation. Leguizamo later said he based his washed-up actor character in the movie The Menu on Seagal, calling him a horrible human. For years, stuntmen have told stories of Seagal being unnecessarily rough, sometimes deliberately injuring them in scenes to make himself look better. This pattern of behavior is its own kind of escape, an escape from collaboration, from respect, and from the simple fact that filmmaking is a team effort, not a one-man show. When you can't physically intimidate your way out of a situation, what's left? You can just leave. This became Seagal's signature move when facing something more dangerous than any movie villain, a journalist with a tough question. Perhaps the most legendary example wasn't a walkout, but a total meltdown on live TV. In 1991, he hosted Saturday Night Live, and to this day, the cast and crew call him the worst host in the show's history. According to stars like Tim Meadows and Bob Odenkirk, Seagal was completely humorless, refused to be the butt of any jokes, and treated the writers horribly. For the famous Hans and Franz sketch, he reportedly said he'd only participate if he got to physically beat up the characters. He was so difficult that producer Lorne Michaels seriously considered canceling the show that week. In the end, his refusal to be self-deprecating got him permanently banned from ever hosting again. Years later, he perfected the literal walkout. During a 2018 interview with BBC's Newsnight, the conversation shifted from his new role as a Russian special envoy to the numerous Carter Me Too allegations against him. Host Kirsty Wark asked, "You've been very much caught up in all the allegations of sexual harassment. I wonder how you deal with all that." The response was dead silence. Seagal stared blankly ahead, ripped the earpiece from his ear, stood up, and simply walked off set without a single word. The host was left staring at an empty chair, forced to explain to the audience what just happened. It was a stunningly blunt escape, a man physically running from his own past on live television. It seems like the tougher the question, the faster Seagal moves. And we've still got more awkward getaways to cover. What do you think is more embarrassing, getting allegedly choked out on set or bailing on a live TV interview? Let us know in the comments. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button because the next escape is an all-timer. For an action star, the ultimate test is a real-world challenge. Back in the 90s, the biggest rivalry in action movies was between Steven Seagal and Jean-Claude Van Damme. Seagal had been publicly trashing Van Damme's fighting skills, and JCVD wasn't going to let that slide. The feud finally boiled over in 1997 at a massive party at Sylvester Stallone's Miami mansion. According to Sly Stallone himself, Van Damme got fed up, confronted Seagal, and challenged him to a real fight in the backyard to settle things once and for all. This was it. The moment of truth. Two of the planet's biggest action stars, with guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger watching. So how did the supposedly unbeatable Aikido master respond? According to Stallone, Seagal made his excuses and left. He literally ran from the fight. But Van Damme wasn't done. Stallone described him as berserk and said he hunted Seagal down at a nightclub later that night to challenge him again. And once more, Seagal pulled a Houdini and vanished. Stallone's final take on who would have won. He didn't mince words. Van Damme was too strong. Seagal wanted none of it. The story became legendary in Hollywood, seen by many as the ultimate proof that Seagal's tough guy persona was just that, a persona. He escaped the fight, but he couldn't escape the story. Seagal's most desperate escapes have been from questions about the dozens of serious sexual harassment and assault allegations made against him by women like Portia de Rossi, Juliana Margulies, and Jenny McCarthy. Regina Simons accused Seagal of raping her in 1993 when she was an 18-year-old extra on his film On Deadly Ground. She says he invited her to a rap party at his house, but when she arrived, she was the only guest. Jenny McCarthy described an audition for Under Siege 2, where Seagal allegedly ordered her to take her dress off. And Portia de Rossi shared a similar story about a private audition where he unzipped his pants while stressing the importance of off-screen chemistry. These aren't just uncomfortable questions, they're serious criminal allegations. Seagal's response has been a constant pattern of denial, deflection, and, whenever possible, escape. The BBC Newsnight walkout is the most blatant example, but his entire public life has become a masterclass in avoidance. In leaked audio from one interview, he was even captured calling female journalists a bunch of effing dirty waz for writing stories he disliked. He has since sought refuge in his political connections, becoming a Russian citizen and a special envoy for Russia-US relations. To many, this move looks less like a career change and more like a strategic escape. An attempt to find a new sphere of influence where his Hollywood past is less of an issue and the questions are easier to control. But as the Newsnight interview proved, the past always finds a way of catching up. From on-set brawls he couldn't win to public showdowns he ran from, Steven Seagal's off-screen life has been one long series of awkward retreats. He built an empire playing a modern-day samurai who was utterly fearless. But when the script was gone, a different person emerged, one who flees from tough questions, runs from real fights, and hides from his own history. These aren't just a few bad days. They're a pattern that shatters the very image he worked so hard to create. For a man who played so many heroes that always stood their ground, Seagal's real-life escapes tell a much more complicated and much more human story, one of ego, pride, and a persona that simply couldn't hold up in the real world.